Hello and welcome to the CNC with Dave Gatton show. Tonight we're going to be discussing the exciting topic of router bits. Should be a lot of fun.
Great intro. The exciting topic of router bits.
Yeah. To me, they're not that exciting, but maybe it's because I've been doing this a while. But I know we get a lot of questions from the newer folks. You know, what kind of router bits should I buy starting out and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, folks have been wanting me to do a show to talk about router bits. So, by golly, we're going to talk about router bits. And we'll try to get to, I know somebody, I can't remember who, but I saw somebody post something and they wanted me to show how to add stuff, you know, to the tool database in VCar Pro, or which, well, I guess it's pretty much the same in all the Vector products. So we'll try to make time to do that as well. But yeah, we're going to talk about router bits. I went out. I was telling Javi before the show. Of course, I have machines a couple of places. I have some out in my garage, and I also have the big garage works out there in my shop around back. So I went out there to get the router bits, and I really didn't think I had that many until I started rounding them all up, and I do have quite a few. But in my case, and probably a lot of other folks too, you know, you kind of have your go-to bits that you use for certain things, and that's pretty much all you use. You might have other bits that you use once in a blue moon, but you know, you don't use them all the time. But they are handy to have when you need one. So I've got my good buddy Javi here is going to help me watch the chat tonight as usual, and he's got his little, whatever you call that, Indiana Javi. And then we got Mr. Mersky was able to join us tonight. Always a pleasure to have you, Mike.
Good to be here.
All right. So, and also I wanted to mention some of you, Mr. Mersky is one, and I know there's a few other folks have probably noticed that some of my posts now are coming from a place called minds.com. It is, it's not a new social media place, but it's been around 3 or 4 years, I think. But I kind of stumbled onto it and got to checking it out, and I think it may be the next big thing when people finally get fed up with Facebook. It's kind of a combination of Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. It's in other words, you don't create a page or a timeline. You have a channel, which is similar to YouTube. You don't have friends. You have subscribers, which again is like YouTube. But it's an open source thing, and it's what's the word I was looking for? I can't remember, but it's I can't think of what I was trying to say. Anyway, it's, you know, I went ahead and signed up. I've got a link down in the show notes if anybody else wants to check it out or sign up. I think it will be. Jerry Bonifield says, my Facebook cut me down to almost nothing. Yeah, a lot of folks have been griping about the Facebook stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on with them. They're you know, all of the bigger ones, they know everything you're thinking, everything you want to buy. You know,
what's the name of this site, Dave?
It's minds.com. I actually have a referral link down in the show notes, and I also have a link to my thing. And I don't know whether Mike just saw my post and wandered over there, but Mike is on there as well. So he and I are subscribers of one another. Dave Mack, I think, was over there. I think he's already joined.
I mean, if Dave Gatton's there, that's a place to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm a trendsetter, buddy, you know. But I was really surprised when I got over there and got to looking around. One of the things that I don't like about it, and it's a pet peeve of mine. I never have liked all these silly usernames. So when people put in some kind of name, there might be a lot of people I know, but I don't know what they are because I don't know their little silly username. Mine is just Dave_Gatton. Michael's is Merchkey Custom, I think, or
Yep, Merchkey Custom.
And you've got your logo there, so it's easy to spot you. But anyway, yeah, check it out, guys. If you're fed up with Facebook like I am, and it's worth checking out. It's like I said, it's not anything new, but it's a lot of folks have asked me about it since they've seen my posts, and they go, "Well, what is that? I've never heard of it." And I'm thinking, well, it's been around about 3 or 4 years, and I've never heard of it either. But it is, like I said, it's all open source. They're transparent, so it's not, it's not like the Facebook where they try to decide what you should be thinking. Let me just say it that way. So anyway, so you'll be seeing, and by the way, folks, I've already created, again, this part's like Facebook, you can create groups. So I already have a GarageWorks CNC group and a Gatton CNC group. So I will be posting there as well as the other places. So Andrew Haig, I remember seeing him over there. So yeah, it's, check it out. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. So if you don't like it, you can always leave. But just thought I'd mention that because I know some folks have been asking me saying, what is that? I've never heard of it. So there you have it. All right. I don't have anything else before we get started. Javi, you got anything you want to talk about?
No, can't think of anything at the moment, Dave.
Okay. Michael, you got anything going on? You want to?
I got a whole bunch of router bits sitting next to me.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. Well, let's you and I show off our router bits.
And I got more on order. Just hit up Amazon today.
Yeah, gotta love Amazon. Gotta love Amazon.
Oh, I think they love me more than I love them, but
yeah, probably. All right, well, let's get started. Like I said, I've got my. This is something I made just really fancy, as you can see. It's just a couple pieces of pine glued together, and then I just drilled a bunch of holes. But I've had the, it's just something to set these router bits in. And probably, as we get started talking about this, probably one of the first, here we go. Probably one of the first router bits a newbie should look into is probably something like this. See if I can hold it up there against my head. You can see it good. This is it's
surfacing bit.
Yeah, it's a CNC spoil board surfacing bit. It's from Whiteside. It's not super expensive. I think it was, I don't know, 20, 25 bucks or something. And a lot of these bits, let me mention this too. A lot of these bits that I'm going to be talking about, if you want to go find them, I've got Amazon affiliate links down below, so you can go check them out. And then, of course, if you do buy anything, you kind of help the channel out as well. But this is one. I haven't really had this one all that long. Now, some of you are probably wondering, like, well, I know Dave doesn't really use an actual spoil board. He always just slips something up underneath. But what I use this for is if I am doing something where it's critical, like say I'm going to do a V-card. Let's say I'm going to do an Aztec calendar, and you got all that detail, and you don't want it to be deeper on one side than the other side. Well, I'll set the blank up there on top of, whatever it is I'm using as my fake spoil board or whatever you want to call it. And then I'll surface the top just enough to make sure that it's all level so that I get, all the detail correct. So that's why I have one. But for you guys that do the spoil board thing, you're going to need something like this. Mike, do you use one similar to this or?
Yeah, the one I had and I'm going to say had because this is an empty box. The Amana tool one with the carbide cutters works great until you let a friend borrow it, and hence the empty box.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't remember, but when I was doing my research to grab the links for these, this is white side. So like I said, it's probably 20 or 25 bucks. I'm pretty sure that one you have was probably at least twice, if not 3 times as expensive.
Yeah, I think, and this one I think was about 120, but it has the replaceable carbide cutters. So
so it's kind of like an Easy Wood Tools thing where you just unscrew it and pop a new one on.
Yeah, and it's same with those. So you can rotate the carbide cutter so you can use the multiple faces of it.
Yeah. Now this one, like I said, this one's got the 3 cutters, but they're not removable or anything. It's just there. You know, you probably could sharpen them a little bit. You know, the guys that get the little sharpening stones and all that, you could probably do that. But I don't use it that much. Another thing you can use, and I know a lot of people use to surface things, is a bit kind of like this, which is a what do you call these? Dado bits or rabbiting bits, I think is what they normally call these.
Yeah, rabbiting bit.
One of the things you got to be careful of when you're surfacing with something like this, I mean, you can obviously do it, okay, but if you look close, and I'm hoping you guys can see this, there's a cutter right here, and then there's a cutter, yeah, right here, but right here in the center there isn't anything.
Right.
So you can't plunge this. But if you, let me hold this, oh, this thing's heavy too. But if you start out here and bring it in while it's spinning and go past and then turn around and come back, you can do it. You just don't want to plunge this thing in the material because there's nothing to cut. And you'll know when you do it because it'll go brrr, and you'll see a little puff of smoke because it's just burning that center part. In fact, this one probably got a little gunk on it from where I've accidentally done it before. But this is a 1-inch diameter, and you can get by with that. But like I said, you got to start off the blank and bring it in while it's spinning around. So that's another option for that. Another Eric Smith, thank you so much. Got a super chat over there. I always wonder every week if that button works. I didn't think it worked, but I never get any super chats. But thank you very much. I appreciate that. You know, and one of the questions or things that I see on Facebook and stuff all the time is, you know, I'm a newbie. What kind of bits do I need to get to start? And you know, obviously you're pretty much going to be parting out whatever it is you make. So you're going to need some kind of an end mill, whether it be a down spiral or an up spiral. Everybody knows, if they've watched my show any at all, they know that my favorite are these. And this was a CMT too, by the way, that orange. This is a CMT. I haven't even pulled this one out of the package, but it's a 2-flute up spiral cut or whatever, upcut spiral, whatever they call it. And I have the link for these down there. These are about less than 20 bucks. And this is what I use to cut the GarageWorks, not the GarageWorks, the Gatton CNC kits. And, you know, I'm cutting plywood with veneers and glue and all that stuff. And I found that out of all the different brands I've tried, whether it be Amana, Whiteside, Freud, or CMT, I seem to get the most mileage out of these. Now, they don't give these to me or pay me to say that. I'm just telling you like it is. I really don't care what kind you use. But these are good, less than 20 bucks, I think. So they're good for parting out. They're also good for doing, actually, when I cut those kits, anybody that's bought the kits, you know, it's got all those pockets and stuff. I don't change tools. I put one of these in there and I hit the button and I go. Yeah, it takes probably a little longer because some of the pockets and some of the holes and stuff it's cutting are bigger, and it would be easier to, maybe faster if I used a bigger bit, but I don't have to change the bit and I don't have to sit there and watch it. I just know when it's going to be done and go back and throw another blank on there. So, but anyway, you'll need some kind of a tool for parting out. You know, 1/4-inch end mill is always a good choice. And, you know, depending on what you're cutting to, you can use these. Let's see if I can find one here. Yeah, this is probably a white thing. You'll notice a lot of these are just old, and this, see how dark that one is? It's burned up. I just don't ever throw them away. I just throw them back in this thing. But this is like a tube flute, but it's just straight. It doesn't have the spirals. There's some cases where you may want to use something like that. The other thing, as far as a starter pack, you know, like if you're going to, you know, what do you plan to do with your machine? If you're going to be cutting plaques and little signs, things like that, they do make a lot of different places have a CNC signs starter bit kit or whatever they call it. But typically what they'll have in them is some kind of an end mill to part it out, probably a 60-degree V-bit of some type. This is a white side here. Maybe a 90-degree. See here, I've got this is a 90-degree white side, and you can see mine are dirty. And then this is of course, a CMT 90-degree, and this has got the 1/2-inch shank, which I don't think I've ever used that, maybe once or twice.
Yep.
I typically buy everything 1/4-inch just so I don't have to switch out the. Yeah, and I've even got my little things here. These are for my Porter cables. And
Jerry Brown was talking when you were talking about upcuts and downcuts. Jerry Brown was saying he's partial to the compression bit, and I am too, to a certain degree. And well, for those of, well, most of the time I'm using a downcut. But if anybody's wondering what a downcut or upcut, for those of you newbies out there, downcut, upcut, or compression bit is, a downcut, the spirals are grooved so that in the direction of the bit, it'll push the material down. So it'll slice down. So the surface of the material is nice and clean when you cut. An upcut is the opposite. It pulls up. So it'll get rid of all the debris, but at the same time, the bottom of the material is nice and clean. And a compression bit, well, I've drawn a very crude one, but a compression bit, a small portion of the bottom pulls the material up. The rest of the bit pulls the material down. So your first pass, you'll put it just past the compression bit. So the beginning of the so this section here will start to clear out the top, and the top will be clean. And then you run the compression bit like you would normally. And when it gets to the bottom, the upcut portion will keep the bottom clean, which is how you get some nice edges.
Yeah, I want to thank Mark Lindsay. I've been saying parting out because that's an old sheet metal term, but what we're talking about is when you do the profile cut, to part out, to get out the part is, yeah, I shouldn't have said parting out because that's kind of sheet metal stuff. This is a couple of bits here, and if you look close, you can tell how the spiral on one goes one way. One of them's a down spiral and one of them's an up spiral. This one is an up spiral, and this one is a down spiral. And if you look close, and if you're having trouble figuring out which one's which, if you just take your fingers, and of course, obviously you got to be careful because it's sharp, but if you spin the bit with your fingers and kind of hold your other fingers on it, whichever way when you're turning this clockwise, whichever way, if it kind of pulls your fingers up, it's an upcut. If it pushes it down, it's a downcut. So,
yeah, and And David Mitchell just had to ask a question about climb versus conventional milling. That's something a little different than the direction of the flutes of a router bit. That's actually on the direction your router, because it's the same on a CNC and on a handheld router or on a router table, and that's the direction the actual router travels on the workpiece.
Yeah, good point. All right, so we've covered the V-bits. There's a lot of different kinds of V-bits that you might want if you're into sign making. You know, I've showed the 90 and the 60. They're also, I like to use this one when I'm doing Aztec calendars. And it is a real small 60-degree V-bit. So it's just 1/4 inch diameter. But you can get into some really tight places with this that you can't get into with a bigger one. So I have one of those. I've got, and of course, here's this, like I said, this is a white side 60-degree V-bit, 1/2 inch diameter. This is a CMT 60-degree V-bit, and I'm not even sure what diameter that is. I think it looks like it's bigger than this one. It's probably about 5/8. But if you look, it's got like 3 cutting things, whereas this one only has 2. So let's see.
It almost looks like a deburring bit.
Yeah, it kind of does, but it's very sharp, and like I said, it's got the 3 edges instead of just the 2, like the white side bit has. Let's see. Another bit that some folks have talked about. Of course, here's another little. I use these a little bit too when I'm mostly when I'm cutting HDPE. This is a 1/8 of spiral, so I use that a lot on the HDPE, the real thin HDPE that I'm cutting. Another thing we talked about on one of the shows, I think we talked about this. I only have one size. But does anybody know what that bit is?
Yeah, absolutely. Keyhole bit.
That is a 3/8 diameter keyhole bit. And basically, the way I do mine, you know, everybody, I think they talk about using that gadget and VCar Pro stuff. I mean, you think about it, the code to do a keyhole is about 4 lines. I mean, you bring it down, you go forward, you come back, and come right back out that 3/8 hole. So it's only about 4, you know, lines of code more or less. But
Dave, I just happen to have not only a keyhole bit, but its father.
Oh, you got well, that's a huge one, man.
It's actually it's called a T-slot bit for
oh, okay. Yeah.
For you know, for those well, for T-slots, for creating those
yeah, I should have brought something in here that had a keyhole spot, but these are great for, you know, putting in the backside of plaques or something, and you know, because
here you go.
Yeah, well, see, I don't even make them. You've got one where you can kind of move it around to get it, the picture adjusted so it's straight. But what I'm talking about is just the you know what I mean? Just a hole, and it goes a slot straight up.
Yeah. Yep. So I get a lot of orders, especially being right outside an Army base. I get a lot of orders for like plaques and stuff. So, you know, I use the keyhole bit quite a bit. And although you're right, Dave, doing the pattern just manually is super easy to do. But one of the nice things about that gadget is what I do is I'll create actual templates, because a lot of these plaques I end up batching out multiples of. So I will create just a little board with a little pocket that the plaque fits in. So if I get an order of 20 of these, I can set it and I can do one at a time, just keyhole bit at a keyhole bit. And so I'll keep these on hand to where.
Oh yeah.
And then have set the gadget up based off, and I'll use the same file that I did that pocket cut to fit the plaque, which I also cut out on the GarageWorks also, so that it just fits right into that pocket. And then I'll have the tool path for the keyhole bit, and then you know, it's just one after another, and I just keep replaying that tool path and just hit cycle start one after the other, and you can batch out. Sometimes I'll do them 20, 30 at a time.
Yeah, that's. I'm going to have to remember and have you back on the show when we do our discussion about hold down methods, because what you just showed, that's one of my favorite ways for something. You know, when you got a lot of them.
Yep.
And I use that. I have some MDF where I've got a right and a left upright pocket, and then I put the uprights for the Gatton CNCs in there, and that's how I engrave Gatton CNC on them. Then I take them and flip them, put them on the other side, and you don't have to worry about them coming out or anything, because you know all the pressure is pushing down, and it doesn't even have to be but maybe an 1/8 inch deep or so. You don't, you know.
Yeah, I don't even think I cut those pockets 1/8 of an inch deep. It's probably a little less than that, but throw the plaque in there and.
Well, if you make them, you know, if you make them, like say you use 3/4 inch MDF and you make the pocket a 1/2 inch, then you almost have to put you a thumb hole or something, because you get them in there and you can't get them out.
Yeah,
they fit so snug. So, but yeah, that's one of the things we've had people ask about doing a show about, to discuss different types of hold down methods, and that's one of the things a lot of people don't think about, but that's a good way.
And speaking of hold downs with those particular and combination of hold downs and keyhole bits, using sometimes when I'm using when I have a regular plaque like this, I like to use a dovetail bit or even a keyhole bit on two sides of the insert, make a recess so it actually slides in and drops. So it actually, I go in and down, and you could just lock one side down if you like, but that'll keep it from popping straight up.
Mm-hmm. I want to mention something. I just glanced over in the chat and I saw a comment Peter made, and then I'm thinking, well, who's he talking to? And he's talking to Carl Whitaker, and he says, Peter did the degree test today. That makes a difference. So I do want to bring that up. And Peter, I apologize. I had thought about you earlier, and I meant to grab that link to that video and put it in the show notes, but I'll do it after the show, because that's one thing we got to talk about is when you get these bits like this one. This is supposed to be a 90-degree V-bit. Well, it might be 88, it might be 89, it might be 89.5. And even if it's off a little bit, if you're doing stuff, it won't quite line up. You'll get these little steps. And that's what it is. And Peter has an excellent video showing how you can do, just use some MDF, I think is what he uses, and run a test with that bit. And then you can figure out exactly what degree it is, even though, because, you order a 90-degree V-bit, this is what they'll send you, but it may not be. It may be it's within their tolerance, but it may not be exact. And for some things, what you're doing, it may not make a difference, but for other things, you'll see that little tiny step. So,
and I think, especially when we get on the topic of inputting the bits into your Vectric software, I think, because I've had some bits, and usually they're the cheaper bits that some of the diameters were not exactly as promised, and that can make a big difference, especially if you're trying to do an inlay or something like that where tolerances matter.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
But the angle of those V-carve bits, especially depending on what like font you're using for text, yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and like I said, Peter has an excellent video showing you how to test,
Yep.
determine exactly what it is, and then you can put that in your tool database so that now it knows what it really is. Okay. Let's see here. I'm looking at this. Really, what I've got right here in front of me is a lot of junk bits. One thing some people, when they talk about starter sets, this is something I bought, and you can see most of them are missing because they're in this thing. And some of these bits in this thing I haven't even used. And I'm trying to remember what brand these are. I don't see anything on this box. I've had it forever. But I think I probably bought it at Lowe's or Home Depot one. I don't remember which. But there's like OG bits and stuff like that I either hardly ever use or in some cases may have never used. But you got to remember, like this particular set right here. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if each one of those got 9, that's 36 bits. So if it was $50, I mean, think about it. That's not very much money per bit. So you get what you pay for is what I'm saying.
And the cool thing now is, that's a standard router bit set. Whereas now most of the companies, Amana, Freud, CMT, pretty much all the players actually make those kind of kits for CNC machines. So you can, if you just got your CNC and you're not sure, what all bits you're going to use, you can either, buy them as you find a need for them, or get one of those starter sets, and some of them aren't too bad. Some of them, some of them get pricey. I saw one for like $1,200, and
they've I know Mana's got the 3-bit set, which is basically end mill, V bit, and ball nose, and then it goes up to a 7-bit set and on up from there. And like you said, they get up there in price, but they're great quality bits.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I said, you have to take the total price and divide it by how many bits are in the kit. And if it's not at least $25 per bit or so, they're probably not that great anyway. Like I said, those were probably less than $3 or $4 a bit. I don't know what I paid for that, but I'm sure it wasn't much because that's when I don't even think I'd had any CNC. I think this was just to use with a hand router.
Yeah, and that's when I get asked about, kind of where to start with router bits. And I'll admit, I went cheap right off the bat when I first started in the CNC, and I still have some of these smaller bits I have are kind of the Chinese made ones that, are pretty much, they work fine for very small details, but they don't last very long. But I have started now purchasing a little bit better bits, just because I think it's, or at least I found it's a better investment. The bits last longer, you get cleaner cuts. So yeah, I found going cheap isn't always, especially when you're trying to, put out a quality product, 3D carving or stuff like that. It's best to just suck it up and buy some good bits.
Yep. You get, it's like everything. You get what you pay for, and sometimes you think you're getting a deal buying those cheap bits off of eBay or something, but then when you figure out how many of those you've used, and then you bought this good one, and now you've used it for, what you would have used 3 or 4 of those for, it's not worth the savings really. But all right, so we've covered, the V-bits and stuff, like if you're going to do signs and plaques and stuff like that. If you're wanting to do a lot of 3D stuff, Mike, I know you do a ton of 3D stuff, and I'm assuming you have a lot of bits like these. These are a Mana tool. These are good bits. but this is a 1/4 inch round nose, I guess you call it, or ball nose, I guess is what they call them. That's a pretty bit right there. I have these I have a 1/4, I have an 1/8, and I have a 1/32. And you're doing a 3D carving, as long as you don't get your step over too much, you don't really need hardly sand them. What kind of tooling do you use when you're doing like say that big what was that great big one you did, that airborne?
Yeah, it was the Master Parachutist badge. Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
So, and that one took a long time. I used for the roughing. I used a roughing, and then also for the profile, I used a 1/4 inch spiral bit, upcut bit, and then I used this. It's a tapered ball nose, and I can't remember. I want to say the ball nose is a 1/8 inch tip on it, but so it's got a 1/4 inch shaft on it, and then it tapers down to an 1/8 inch ball nose.
I guess I should have shown one of the other ones. I showed the 1/4, and it looks like it's straight down because it's all a 1/4 inch. But here's an 1/8 like you got, and you can see how there's the 1/4 inch shank, and then they taper down to an 1/8. So
yeah, and I've even got one that tapers down even more. I think this one tapers to like a 1/16 or something. And I've done a few really detailed 3D carvings. I did some like drill sergeant badges and U.S. Army crests that had a lot of really kind of intricate details that I use those. I mean, I think like I usually tell people, just like any other tool in the shop, especially, you can get one of those kind of generic CNC router bits, but there's a lot of other specialty bits that I usually recommend. Get them when you need them. If you're going to do a 3D carving, depending on how much intricate detail, then go ahead and make the investment in some of those ones. And I will say that, especially if you're going for detail, that is where you want a good bit. I've been even starting to buy some of these bits with the, and you probably can't see it on here, but it's got the different coating.
Yeah. Are those Amana?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was holding up too, and you can't see it, but it has that extra coating on there. But,
and that just helps them stay sharp a little bit longer. It helps dissipate the heat, but
yeah, those are good bits. Amana's, a little on the pricier side probably than some bits, but I've been very happy with the ones I've used.
Yeah, and I've got, just like you, Dave, I've got a mix of both for my CNC and for my router table. CMT, Amana, Whiteside, Freud, who knows? I got a mix.
Yeah, I meant to grab another bit, and I didn't. One of them's, well, I have 2 different router tables, and I have them in the router tables, and I didn't grab one. But I wanted to. I'll mention this since y'all made me think of it. The other day, somebody was on Facebook, and they were asking about the best way to do the double-sided thing. And they were trying to cut through something that, I don't know, was like 1.5 inches or 1 5/8 or something. And they were having trouble, when they flipped it, to getting the profile cuts to line up. And, of course, people are saying, well, use pins or, giving some different things. But my solution to that would be carve the first side, V carve the first side, engrave, or whatever you're doing to it. Don't do a profile. Flip it over, and then engrave or V carve or whatever you're doing on the back side. Then do the profile cut, but only go about 1/2 inch or whatever, however far you want to go. If you don't have a bit far enough to go all the way down, don't worry about it. Just go down a ½ inch or whatever, take it over to your bandsaw, rough cut it out. And like I said, I didn't bring one in here, but have a flush trim bit with a bearing set up on your router table, zip, and you're done. Instead of trying to line up profile cuts doing that flipping thing, because if it's off even a hair, it's going to show up and you're going to be sanding.
And that's a good technique, not even for thick materials. So one of those plaque forms I just showed you, here's one of those plaques. It's going to the Pentagon, if you didn't realize.
Imagine.
But I don't know if you can kind of see, but there's a slight lip on there that I didn't cut all the way through. So now I don't have to worry about doing tabs or having, I cut most of the way through, rough cut them out on the bandsaw, and I'm going to do that. I'll take them over to my router table, flush trim bit, and matter of seconds cleans it up perfectly.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. You don't have to worry at all about lining up the cuts on a two-sided cut using that way. I realize there's people that, they get these CNC machines and they forget that it's not always the best tool for the job, but there's no way I would ever do a two-sided cut and try to profile it out twice and line them up. It's just a waste of time to me to try to do it when it's so much quicker. I keep a flush trim bit set in my router table all the time. That's all I use it for, pretty much. So, but I'm just bringing that up, to, like I said, to remind people that sometimes you got to remember that, oh, I have other tools in my shop and, I can use it. Now, if you don't have anything but a CNC, you can get, sometimes they're hard to find, and if you do find them, they're pricey, but you can get extra long bits. But like I said, that's the only way I would cut.
But be very, very careful with them. I have I got a 3-inch, 1/4-inch bit and a 3-inch, 1/2-inch bit. I used the 3-inch, 1/4-inch bit once, and all it took was just that one time, and it just bent. I mean, that's
speeds.
You got to have really, really slow speed, and even then.
But like for guys that are making like the guitar bodies, sometimes you got to do a pocket that's pretty deep.
Yeah,
you can't do it from the other side. You can't do half of it here, flip it. You got to do it all from that side. So you can get extra long bits. But, like I said, even if I was cutting something, 2 inches and I had a bit that was 2.5, I would still probably cut it, 1/2 inch around and then take it to the bandsaw, cut it out, and then hit it with the flush trim bit at the, and when I say flush trim bit, I'm not talking 1/4-inch diameter. I've got some that are like 1/2 inch diameter out there. And, you got to have a hold of what you run across that thing, because it'll snatch it out of your hand in a heartbeat. If it's almost scary as big as that thing is. But it's easy to run it on that bearing and get it trimmed up, and you can't tell. It just cleans up really good.
And they do make some longer specialty CNC bits, like this one's one for doing foam, like Kaizen foam and stuff like that. It's a 1/4-inch upcut bit, but it's specifically designed for doing foam.
But something like that, you wouldn't try to part out something that's oak.
No, and regardless, I mean, the more you're asking something to do, the less you kind of got to ease back your feeds and speeds. Question was asked about sharpening bits. And my recommendation is for router bits, or I'm sorry, for CNC bits is unless they have a removable, replaceable carbide tip, just replace your bit, because as you sharpen something, you're removing material, so the geometry of that bit has changed. And I mean, I guess you could grab
Yeah,
some
you bring up a good
calipers.
point. You have to, yeah, exactly. You got to go through the caliper, and then you have to basically recalculate all your speeds. And there's no guarantee unless you're an expert sharpener. That I mean, and the bit is completely flat. That like some of these here on the bottom right of my little display here. If it that you can sharpen it effectively. You're absolutely right. Your best bet is buy a decent quality bit, and when it when it either have it professionally sharpened, and even then you're going to lose material. You'll have to sacrifice the accuracy, or get another bit.
Yeah. And a lot of these bits, even the better quality bits, you're only talking 20 to 40 bucks for a lot of these. So it's not like, you know, you're getting a second mortgage. Yeah, there's some ones. I'm eyeballing a 90 degree, I'm sorry, a 60 degree V-bit bit from a Mana I want to buy. And it's got removable carbide cutters, and it's like 100 and something bucks. Haven't pulled the trigger yet, but one of these days. But most of the bits I have, you know, most of the good bits I have, you know, 30 bucks are probably the average price for most of them.
Yeah, if you had a well, for example, something like this. This is what they call a bowl bit or a tray bit. It's 3/4 diameter, 1/2 inch shank, and it's got a 1/4 inch radius. So if you're doing like a pocket and you want a rounded thing like a bowl or a tray, you know, you'd use something like that. But so if you've got something where you had a sharpening stone or something, you might could hit it a couple of times and, you know, get a little more mileage out of it. But like Mike says, these things, you know, are not that expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, if you built a CNC or bought a CNC, you're used to spending money. So, you know, 20, 30, 40 bucks for a new bit.
What I will say is if you do start out with the lesser quality bits until you hone your skills on your feeds and speeds. I remember my first bit, my first 1/4 inch bit. Now, granted, it wasn't a great quality bit, but it lasted me a week or two. And after I got used to not running it too fast to burn it out, not running it too hard, just the right feeds and speeds. After that, I bought an Amana bit. I think the Amana bit was the third bit I bought. It lasted me close to a year and a half. So so your technique is also one that it's like you buy an old clunker to first start out with mechanics. You don't buy a Mercedes and start learning how to take apart the engine on it.
Yeah, Javi, I see you put a link over there for Peter. Is that the one where
that's the one? That's episode 151. That's his. How
to get the angle on the V-bits?
Yes, how to get the angle on the V-bit.
Excellent.
And speaking, you know, to kind of go back to the sharpening thing, both Peter Pasquale and Mark Lindsay mentioned that they do sharpen their V-bits. So I've never tried that. It's interesting. Be curious to see. You know, I don't know if I trust myself to keep the angle right.
So that's one thing I will say, Mike. That's one thing I will say that does work well, because the V-bit, you're losing material, but you're not losing the angle. You're not losing the tip. I have sharpened my V-bit twice, and it's come out really nicely afterwards. You don't have a problem when you're sharpening V-bits, because what you lose throughout the entire surface. You don't lose the angle, and there, if you're careful, and and the point of the V-bit, you'll lose a little bit there, but that's where you zero it, so it makes no difference.
And see, like this one, I think this is what Peter's talking about. It's just got 2 cutters. So if you put it flat, now if I can get the right way, and you know, you're just running it across that stone a little bit, you're not really changing anything. So you probably could do it. Now,
yeah, that's what they said, is they're doing the backs.
With this V-bit, with it having 3 sides, now you got a whole nother set of problems. So, you know, because you can't there's not much. Well, I guess you could, but I don't know. They're
And
just
Peter,
not that much money to me. And
I pulled out a nice big one, so hopefully it's a little better for people to see. There are two sides to it, and all you have to do is on this flat side here, on the flat side. Well, yeah, let's see. Yeah, on the flat side, just run it across the stone, and then flip it over and run it across the stone again, and
of course, silly me, Peter has done a video on that. So episode 113, if you guys want to go check that out, Peter's got a video.
Yeah.
I will definitely be going to check that out.
Mark Lindsay made a good point. You know, if you haven't subbed to Peter already, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, you're out of your mind.
He's got pretty much everything we talk about. He's already done videos on it. So, let's see. Somebody, who was it? I lost it. Wood Bucket, Gary, somebody. Sharpen the flats with a diamond card. Yeah. Like I said, you could do that, but I'm lazy, I guess. I'd rather just get on.
Yeah, and if you do, by the way, I have tested the Harbor Freight inexpensive set of diamond sharpening. Don't use it. Don't use it under any circumstances. I think it made it worse the first time I tried that. And then I bought a decent sharpening diamond sharpening set, and it was fantastic, night and day. So be very, if you're dealing with CNC bits here, this isn't a knife. So
yeah. And Dale Ludlam over there, he says I guess he's talking about his cabinet shop, we have a sharpening service that sharpens all of our carbide bits, has for 37 years. If you're using a ton of stuff in a production environment, and I don't know what they charge per bit to sharpen, that would probably be good. But for somebody like me, I buy the bit for $20, and do I want to pay somebody?
It's $7 or $8 usually is the going rate.
Nah, I'm not gonna waste my time. I'm just gonna throw it in the drawer and grab a new one. So, but I've got a ton of old bits. If somebody wants some, pay for shipping, I'll send them to you and get them sharpened.
I'll take you up on that. I might do some little sharpening.
I have those little plastic things that, like when you buy deck screws, you buy like a 5-pound thing, and it comes in that little plastic thing. I've got one of those in the drawer, and when I get a bit that's no longer usable, I just throw it in there. And I've got, like these new CMTs. They ain't no telling how many of those I got in there. And I got a bunch of white side. I've got several of the down cut spiral. I got a bunch of those in there. That
2 filed cabinet drawers filled with Vermont Americans.
I don't think I have any Vermont. But all right, let's we're getting close to the top of the hour here. I saw some other questions. Somebody was wanting to show something about the tool database.
Yeah, there's been a few questions talking about kind of setting up the tools in the database, both like things like step over percentages and stuff like that.
Okay. Javi, do you have yours on your computer where you can screen share? I can screen share, but I'm not sure. Since this is my office computer, I don't even know if I got any tooling in there.
I will. Yeah, I'll log on the other computer. I was just going to show one of the bits that I actually did create a tool path for. Okay. And basically what you got to realize is when you do create a tool path, it's nothing more than a simple vector design of, in this case, it's an OG with a little bit of a flat top. You're going to only do from the halfway point to here, or actually to here if you want the whole thing.
You just reminded me, Javi, that I had looked up the Vectric tutorial for that, and I've got it saved somewhere, and I meant to put it in the show description, and I forgot. So
I'll throw that in there.
As soon as you held that up, because it's kind of easy to do the end mills and the ball nose and stuff like that. But when you have to draw something in, you know, something that's not already in there.
So I have my tool database up if you want me to.
Okay, well, let's pull yours up real quick, Mike.
Yeah, pull yours up. Meanwhile, I'll look for the link and I'll put it up on the chat.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Can you see that?
I can.
All right.
Hold on. Let me lock it on you, Mike, so the silly camera will quit flipping around. Okay, there we go.
All right. So this is kind of what I keep in there. Some people keep all the standard stuff in the Vectric software. I go ahead and delete everything I don't use just because I think it gets a little cluttered. So in true Yankee fashion, all of my tools are Imperial. Nothing against those
That's a
master
good
ones.
idea. Mine looks really cluttered because I haven't deleted the ones I don't use.
So I do this not only to my tool database, but I also do this to my post-processor database. So
good idea. Yeah.
So the only post-processors I have, I put them in an archive folder. So the only ones when I go to choose a post-processor are my laser for my JTEC Photonics laser, or for doing the router. So
so there's no chance of grabbing the wrong one by mistake.
Not saying that I've done that before, but so you see up here on the top, I have my diamond drag bit, which is another one we really didn't talk about, but awesome. And it's a compression bit, so your router doesn't actually run; it actually drags over the material. And I've done a few things on glass with it. Amazing. The detail you can get with a diamond drag bit is awesome. And then I have my laser, my end mills. So you can create a new one. You can copy another one and then just modify it. So if you're doing adding a new V bit and it might be a little bit different, you can just copy it and then just kind of change it. Oops. Did not want to do that. All right. So we'll just pull up, one of the V bits, just especially, most of it is self-explanatory and explanatory. And if you go to, if on the packaging, it doesn't have all the information, most of the time, the website that you bought or the website of the manufacturer will have all the information on it. A lot of the other information, as far as kind of the step over and stuff like that, there's some standard recommended ones. But I found where those really come in play is some of the stuff for doing pockets and then doing 3D finish carving. So actually, let me pull up a tapered ball nose bit.
And one thing that I'd like to interject, the tool database, this is not for the actual, this will make no difference as far as the actual carving. It is mostly for show, as far as for the display, for the so you can see the preview beforehand, because you could change the shape of a tool on the tool database, and if you don't get it exactly right, but your calculations are right, your carving will still turn out well, and vice versa.
Yeah, depending on the geometry of the cutter. I mean, but there's some stuff, especially when doing 3D carving, where
you want precision.
Yeah. And it'll affect things, like especially if whether you use like just a regular ball nose bit versus a tapered ball nose bit, especially just because, and that's where the question was asked about the step over. And the step over is when it plans the tool path. just kind of that from one, it goes over and carves out a section. When it goes over to kind of move over to step over, what percentage of the tip of that bit, especially on a tapered ball nose bit or
Yep.
a V carve or even an end mill, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
What percentage?
A good example is a dish cutter. I have a 1-inch dish cutter, and if you can envision a 1-inch dish cutter with 1/4-inch radii on either side, basically the middle 1/2 inch is the only flat part. So if you're going to use the dish cutter to not only create the curves on the side of the bowl, but also flatten the whole area, you have to have at least a 75%,
like this, right, Javi?
like exactly like
'Cause
that.
it's got a little bit of flat.
Yeah, exactly like that, and actually the same size. And you'd have to go at least 75%, rather 25% overlap.
Yeah. So some people will tell you that like a 10% step over for a tapered ball nose is fine. I usually go a little less because then it'll just kind of tighten things up. You know, so those master parachutist badges was 36 inches wide, and even with between the 3 tool paths I had to run, it ended up being something like 30 hours of machining.
Yeah, and it all depends on, it's a balance. It's a fine balance. Yep. that if you don't know, you'll learn. For those of you who just started, it's a fine balance between how much machine time do you want to put and how much actual sanding time do you want to put. Because I've had some 3D images that I'll put 2%, and that job will take days, but it'll come out smooth as silk. I mean, there'll be very little machining left. Whereas sometimes I don't mind spending a little time sanding, and then it'll be done in a day.
So you probably can't tell on here, but these are some of the tests I've done. I've been trying to 3D carve my stars for my American flags to look how it is when I hand sand them. But if you look really close, you can see where that step over, and that was a 7% step over, and you can slightly see where that bit kind of went over to where, you know, when I cut these out, I'll have to do a little bit of finish sanding just to kind of remove that tooling.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for showing your setup there, Michael. I had a question too I was going to ask you, which is going to lead me to something else I saw. Like, for example, let's just say a 1/4-inch end mill, up spiral, whatever you use to profile cut your parts. Let's say you're cutting, I don't know, MDF, so you can go really fast. And you've got that tool set up, you know, everybody saw where you can set the depth of pass and you can set the inches per you know, the feed rate and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, so what do you do, or how have you handled it if, you know, you have that tool set up to cut one thing where you know you can really fly, and now all of a sudden you're going to bring that tool in to put a tool path on something, but now you've got like something really hard like oak or something, and you're going to need to either change the depth of cut or the feed rate or both.
Did I think about it beforehand, or did I have to do it, or did I not? Because that's two different things.
The reason I'm bringing this up, I saw something. I don't remember where I saw it. Probably Facebook, I guess. I don't know. But, you know, and maybe it's overthinking it. But when I saw it, I thought, that's pretty cool. I like the way that guy did that. And what this person had done is, in his tool database, he had like a group called MDF. And then he had all the tools that he uses with MDF. So all those settings, depth of pass and feed rate, were set for cutting MDF. Then he had another group for like oak or pine or, you know, whatever it might be.
That makes sense. That's an excellent idea.
I thought it was kind of cool, but it does make it a lot more to keep up with, I guess, with your tools. But I mean, once you get it set up, I guess it's not too bad.
Yeah, I was just saying, even the setup of that would literally take seconds to do. That's actually a good idea. So,
yeah,
like, that is one thing that, and I don't remember, drawing a blank. Invedible's free software that's online.
Easel.
Yeah, Easel. That is one thing that, you know, just to take some of that guesswork out, where you can choose your material, choose which bit, and it will adjust your kind of feeds and speeds for you based off the material. Yeah, I mean, and that would be a quick one. So if I am thinking, I just hit, when I'm creating my tool pass, I'll select, you know, which bit I have in there, and then I'll either hit the edit and then adjust the speed off of it, because I might also adjust how many passes. You know, if I'm doing something like MDF, I'll take a lot more, not only the speed will be faster, I'll take a lot more aggressive of a cut.
Right.
Whereas, you know, I just cut out 20 white oak plaques that I eased it back quite a bit.
That makes sense. There's 5 or 6 settings that I use regularly. Either one time when I feel like cutting something real fast, I'll go 200 inches a minute. But when I'm really taking my time, I go far less. There's 5 settings, and I do actually have 5 of the same end mill. The most common tools I use, V-bits and end mills, where I do have a different speed on each, feeds and speeds on each. But I never thought of categorizing them by wood type. That's a great idea.
Now that I've mentioned that, and I see people in the chat are going, man, that's a great idea. I wish I could remember who did it so I could give them credit for it, because it wasn't, and I still haven't done it. But when I saw that, I'm thinking that's so neat to do that, because I'm bad about using a tool, because a lot of times I program stuff here in the office, throw it on a flash drive, then take it out to the shop or the garage or wherever I'm going to cut. Well, if I've cut something the time before that where I was flying or cutting real deep, and then I grab that tool and I do the tool path and all, and I don't really pay attention to how many passes and how fast it's going. And then I get out there and I fire it up and it's like, whoa, you know, let me slow this thing down. Or in other cases, I might go, oh, it's crawling. What am I doing? So, yeah, that would be a neat way to and if you're new, you know, of course, the best way to do it would be to create a group for the different material, you know, MDF, plywood, whatever, maple, oak, all that stuff. And then as you learn what you feel comfortable with your machine, the rigidness of your machine, and, you know, the tooling you have, all those factors, then you can, you know, plug that in. You know, we've beat that feeds and speed stuff to death on here. I hate to even talk about that, but what I always tell people is pick, you know, the rule of thumb kind of is, you know, if you're using a 1/4 inch bit, you shouldn't go more than 1/8 depth. Just as a good, safe rule of thumb, you know, half the diameter of your tool. Well, if you're going 1/8 depth, just pick a speed, you know, just, you know, 30 inches a minute or whatever. You'll know real quick whether you're too slow or you're too fast. If you're too slow, which you probably would be at 30, especially in Mach 3 or even in UC CNC, you can bump it up until you start to hear chatter. When you hear chatter, then back it back down another 10 or 15%. And then remember what that speed is, and you'd be pretty safe for that material, for that tool, and for that depth of cut.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. That's one nice thing about having a remote on your machine is to be able to kind of do that, because I've done that a couple times where I did not plan it out properly and had to make some adjustments.
Oh, same here. And most of the time what happens to me is I get impatient and I just kick that speed up.
Yeah.
Not a good habit to get into, by the way.
Well, you know what kind of gets me, and maybe it's just because of the way I'm wired, but I see people all the time that post on Facebook or a forum or whatever, and they'll say, "I'm getting ready to cut this Humpty Dump material, whatever it might be. I've never cut it before. What should I use?" And I'm thinking, why do people ask that? Throw a piece of it up there, pick a corner, and do a test, because their machine may not be like yours.
The answer is test it. Every machine, every wood,
do a little work yourself, guys. I mean, come on. But and because when they do ask that on those forums or Facebook group or whatever, if 10 people respond, you'll get 10 different answers.
Yep.
You know, and I'm thinking, you don't know any more than you did when you first asked the question. Just go do the test yourself. Then you know what your machine is capable of doing.
Carl was asking, when V carving, do most use flat depth? That all depends on the. For me personally, that all depends on the how deep I want to V carve. You know, and then that depends on how fast I want the job done and how nice I want it to look, and what font I'm using. If I'm using a very, very wide font and I'm going shallow, then you flat carve. But if
sometimes you have to, if you don't want to go through them.
If you want to go through the material.
Don't ask me how I know that one too.
But as far as if you're using a really thin lines or tiny V carves near the top, then the answer is of course not. But I'm hoping the depth is what you were saying. If you're asking what type of router bit to use for a flat depth, well, that all depends on what you would guess or calculate. That would be the use 2 or 3 different ones depending on how much you have to hog out to see which one works best. I always try to use the biggest bit I can, because even the smaller bits leave lines in between, and that's a lot more sanding.
And that's one thing nice about at least in the Vectric software, of being able to take those tool paths that actually have that kind of visualization on there, because sometimes it's purely on how you want that whether you're doing, and I'll give 2 examples. One would be my burnt oak American flag. I V-carve out all the stars for the Union. I do a flat bottom for that, just because I think that gives it more of the carved look. So it's the look I'm going for those. Whereas I'll do a lot of like signs or plaques and do V carving for different fonts, especially very kind of artistic fonts and stuff like that. And I won't. Usually they're thinner, so I don't have to worry about cutting through. But it just kind of gives that the look I'm going for.
Yeah. Sometimes it just comes down to, I mean, I've V-carved stuff before and then looked at it and like, I think I'll go a little deeper. And so I'll either adjust the program, or in some cases I'll just move off and lower my Z by say 10 thousandths and then re-zero it and hit it again, go through that again to cut it a little deeper.
Yeah.
Another thing, some folks, excuse me, Mike, another thing some folks do too, if you're planning on making a sign, and I'm not a big fan of this method, I'll say that up front, because it may work and it may not, depending on how good your planer is. But if you're making a sign and you're going to engrave some stuff, and say you want to paint, and then you're going to use your planer to skim the top back off. If you're going to plane a 30-second off, you could actually set your V depth in the program to go a 30-second farther down. So when you look at it, you're like, oh, it looks like crap. It doesn't look that great. But then when you
shave it off,
you shave it off, it looks good.
I used to do that. I used to do that quite a bit until I realized that it all depends again on the design. When you end up doing it that way, if you're not careful, or if it's not a really hard wood, like for instance, if you're doing it on MDF, let's say you have a letter A where there's a triangle going up to the top. That last pass will not only nip off the little top of the triangle of the pyramid, it'll knock off the whole triangle of the A. It'll chip pieces
well, that's
off
why,
right and left.
I'm not a fan of using the plant, because it's could get some tear out or something and mess up your whole project like that. I'd rather do the lacquer and then carve it and then paint it and then
that's the best method. Yeah, and wipe it off.
The way I like to do it. I got I know we're running out of time here. I got one more bit that I forgot to show, and we haven't really talked about these kind. Mike, if you may have used these, or Javi, you can jump in here. This is an Amana bit, but this is what they call an engraving bit. We'll hold it up here. It's 1/4 inch diameter, 45 degree with a 1/32 tip. So, and I probably can't even get this close enough for you to see, but there's actually just a tiny flat on there. Javi, have you got a big one you can show?
No, but I got one a lot smaller. I got a 0.01 engraving bit. It's 0.01 flat. Remember, these are actual engraving bits for a rotary engraver.
Okay.
But well, I can show you one like that. Hang on a second. Let me pull up my fat ones.
But the reason I was going to bring these up, and I forgot to mention it, I bought these for when I was doing the text on text or word on word, whatever you want to call that style of thing. Mike, did you use some of those?
I was just looking. I don't own any of those.
I got tons, but they're all tiny. I'm looking for the big one. Here's one. Might be able to see it here. Let me put paper in front of it here. All right, so hopefully it'll. Just a second. Let me see if it'll focus on it.
Yeah, I can see the flat on. Hold on.
Let me. I just need to focus on myself so I can. Okay, so there you see the flat at the very top.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's basically it's 60 degrees on either side, and right there's like this particular one is a 0.6 0.06. It's got a little flat action area.
Yeah, Sean DIY CNC and woodworking. He says, has anyone done a video on how to put the bits into VCarve Pro? If you scroll up, Javi just
here, I'll post it again.
Okay. Yeah, we were just talking. There's a good vector tutorial. I meant to put it in the show notes and I forgot, but I will put it in there after we're over here. But thank you, Javi, for.
You've got me presenting still, Dave.
Yes. Okay. But yeah, that's another bit. Like I said, the text on text or word on wood or whatever. It's good to have those ones with a little bit of a flat, because sometimes you're trying to get in there real tight, and if you don't have a bit, and you try to do it with a regular V bit, you're going to have a lot of little fuzzy things to sand. Don't ask me how I know that.
Hey, that's the best way to learn.
It is. And and I guess that's why sometimes, I've been doing this stuff a long time and I still don't know it all. But it always kind of irritates me when I see somebody on Facebook and they're like asking a question that they could in 5 minutes figure out for themselves. I just, I'm sorry, I'm just not that way. I only ask if I can't figure it out. I want to figure it out myself. And I think because it'll stick with me better if I've, learned the hard way or whatever. But
well, I'm a mixture of both. I will I will find stuff out for myself. Like I mean, like recently, I'm into you know, I recently bought a piece of land that has a bamboo forest on it, and I've been in a rabbit hole of YouTube videos on how to cut bamboo and what to do with bamboo and how to preserve it. So I'm learning all on my own, but at the same time, I do like to ask other people who are experienced, who have practiced with the particular skill I'm trying to learn, to get their wisdom on the subject firsthand.
You know, there's a lot of good resources out there, but and I use them, whether it's, you know, the Google box or YouTube or whatever. But I think the big point is just don't be afraid to just try it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like what Dave said earlier about the feeds and speeds. That's one question that when people ask me, and I'm sure you two are the same way, I basically refer them back to themselves, because that was what was done to me originally, and that was the best advice I was given, which is don't go by what anybody else says on the feeds and speeds. Your machine is different, your wood is different, your bits are different, the variables are all completely different. You have to test each, and even testing one particular wood with one particular bit, and it works perfect at one particular speed, you use it. It's happened to me. You put a test wood out, it's perfect. Guess what? I go to do the piece, that other wood is just got just enough different characteristics that all of a sudden it's not perfect anymore.
And you also got to be careful, because unfortunately testosterone sometimes get involved in that. And I have literally heard people, oh yeah, I run that thing at 800. You're good. Bump it up to 1,000.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
But I have heard people recommend, and that might be a bit of an exaggeration.
I've got a friend of mine. I've got a friend of mine who always runs all his bits, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he always runs all his bits at full speed because he wants a clean cut. And I mean, that's aside from wearing out your bit faster, wearing out your machine faster, and being overkill, because you don't need to do that if you got the right speeds. That's just a bad practice.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Another thing we've talked about a ton on this show, I know, I am very conservative with my feeds and speeds.
Same here.
Not because my machine can't handle it. It's because I'm not going to stand there and watch it. So I don't even want to think about it. So the faster you run it, the more aggressive you run it, the more likelihood something might happen. But, you know, I run those Gatton CNC kits all the time, and I am never out there. I'm watching it on the camera. I may be around in my shop. You know, if I'm in the house, I'll have it on my little tablet. I've got the camera pointed at it. I can see. And if I'm outside, even if I'm outside sanding something in the driveway, I'm not looking at it, but I can hear it. And that's all you need. You know, I never want to be farther than earshot from it. Even when I have the camera, if I'm if I'm back here in my office, and, you know, the garage is at the other end of the house, I get all the way back here, I can't hear that thing. I mean, I can't hear nothing, the dust collection or anything. But I'll turn the sound on my tablet. Well, if I'm sitting in the other end of the house, I don't need to turn the sound on because I can hear it through the wall. But yeah, I want to be able to hear it and all that. But that's why, to me, it's like some of these guys that, you know, they'll go, well, man, I had to run this thing 3 times before I got it to come out right. Well, maybe if you did just run it the first time, you know, easy, slower, and, you know, be a little more conservative as far as the speed, you'd have been done a whole lot quicker.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the tortoise and the hare thing, you know?
Yeah. And when I first started out, I know I tried to be probably a little too aggressive. And that's one of the things I learned, because especially in my shop, if I'm in my shop, I try to always have my CNC running and me doing something else. I mean, that's, you know, one of the big reasons I like having a CNC in my shop is it's a it's a second set of hands. It's doing something else while I'm working on another project. So yeah.
And see, that's you hit the nail on the head there, Michael, because you shouldn't be standing there watching it anyway. I don't think, if you're, unless you've got absolutely nothing else to do. But, if you've got something else to sand, it doesn't matter whether that machine of yours takes 15 minutes to finish that part or it takes 10 minutes. If you're busy sanding, you're doing two things at once. So it's still, you're saving time.
Now, I'll admit that sometimes V-carves and 3D finish passes are fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. It is kind of addicting sometimes too.
Right.
I tell you, the one that gets me is when I'm doing a finishing pass with the rotary axis, because like doing a spindle or something, because it's it's turning and it's doing that, and it's like, that is so cool to watch. But yeah, anything else, I'm getting my settings where I know it'll run without any problems, without me watching it, and I go do something else.
One of these days, I'll have my rotary axis hooked up.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna change. I got it out the other day, and I was going to play around with it some more, and I think I'm going to change the design a little bit to try to make it better. So, and
in safety orange.
No, I wasn't planning on a metal one, but well, you never know. You never know what I'm going to do. Because I never know what I'm going to do.
I bet you can't do it. You probably wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, now you know I'm going to do it. Yeah, I probably should do one out of metal, just cause.
And I know someone that can help test it.
Yeah, you be my beta tester for sure. Have we got any other questions? I know
Well, Mike Bloomington Mike came a little late, and he asked the question that I went over with the upcut bit earlier. And yes, Mike, the answer is your first cut should be just past the upcut section. That's why the upcut section is a lot smaller than the downcut section, because they're expecting you to go past that to get to the downcut section. So the downcut section will keep the top nice and clean. And if you come in from the side, it doesn't matter.
We've had what I think is a really good discussion tonight about router bits. I never would have thought we'd be going an hour and a half talking about router bits.
But wait, did you mention dovetail yet?
Did I mention what?
Dovetail bits.
Oh, well, that's a whole nother. I didn't even bring those in.
That's an episode on its own.
Yeah, I do have this little, if you look close, I don't know. Let me see if you grab another one so you can tell the difference. Okay, both of these are Porter cable.
Collets. Yep.
Collets. Okay, both of them are 1/2-inch collets, but notice what this one's got in it. Can y'all tell?
A snap ring?
It's got a sleeve, because when I bought my, I think it's a Rockler. Yeah, it's Rockler. No. Yeah, I think it's a Rockler dovetail jig that I bought. And then I bought the dovetail kit, the router bits. And you got a straight cutter, and you got I think it comes with 2 different degree dovetails. But anyway, just so I don't lose that sleeve, I keep it in there. So this is for, and it's an odd shape. It's like 5/16 or something.
Oh, so that's actually a 1/2-inch collet also.
This is a 1/2-inch collet, but it's got that sleeve in there that you have to use when you're using the dovetail bits, because they're an oddball. I don't know why they made them that way, but they're an oddball.
I use that's another thing that we haven't mentioned, but well, it's related to bits, but I'm extremely happy with my choice of collet, which is the not the eliminator, what's it called? The chuck. The eliminator chuck, the
muscle chuck.
Muscle chuck, thank you. Yeah, the muscle chuck is fantastic. It's a 1/4 turn, you tighten it. I have yet to have a bit run out on me once for any minuscule amount.
I have one of those on my Porter cable that I'm using on my Garage Works 4x4 that's out in the shop. I don't run that's the machine I run the least. I run the other two that I have in the garage more, and of course the one's got a spindle with a bunch of collets, and most of the time I'm using a 1/4-inch thing on it anyway. No, we got another who is that? Grant Clark, another super chat. You guys are awesome. Thank you. That's much appreciated. And then I have the DeWalt 611. Yeah, is that right? DeWalt 611.
Yeah, 611.
And I'm just using that little flimsy thing they got. I'd like to get a muscle chuck for that one. I think they make one for it.
They do.
You
They do.
got one, Mike? Do you have a muscle chuck on your? Because you got a DeWalt, right?
Yeah, I got the DeWalt. No, I just have I have bought a replacement collet, so I have both an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch collet on it. But
Do you change bits often, Mike?
Depends on what I'm doing. I mean, yeah, I run so many different things through there, but
yeah, almost every job I go, most of the time, most jobs will be 3 to 7 bit changes for me, and oh, that muscle chuck is it's a dream. It really is.
And I've thought about investing in one eventually, but I just haven't pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of that little button you got to push. I hate those.
Yes, it doesn't. My palm router I have a Makita palm router that has the same thing. It doesn't bother me. So
yeah. All right. Any other questions over there, Hobby? Did we miss anything?
Let's see here.
I'm trying to look without my glasses like I can.
Yeah, Todd. Well, not a question, but Todd mentions Alair Corporation for router collets, and that's who I use. So instead of using a spacer, you can actually buy, and they make collets for just about all of them. So it's an actual collet, so you don't have to worry about putting a spacer inside a collet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike was saying be careful add-on chucks because they killed the bearings on his M12 VC. I mean, I have them on a Porter cable 890, and I have it on my spindle, and been running for, well, on my Porter cable it's been running for 7 years. I mean, I've had it before the or 5 years before I even got the CNC, and I haven't had an issue with the bearings. Those muscle chucks are very well balanced. But there's always the possibility of it. I mean, clearly.
Thank you, Carl. I don't want to let a super chat go by without mentioning. Thank you, Carl. That's my old buddy from high school.
And yes, Larry Duggar, it's a 6A or a 6B is the muscle chuck for the spindle, depending on whether you have a coarse or fine thread. I want to say that mine was a 6B, but I'm not sure. I have to double check.
Yeah, I don't really mind the chuck, using the collets and stuff that's on my spindle. A lot of guys don't like the two wrenches because they say, I'll hit my knuckles to get. But if you do it right, it's easy.
I don't mind the 2 wrenches, but sometimes, well, I do and I don't. I mean, I don't have a problem with using the actual wrenches. I have a problem with trying to reach in and find them so many times because when you have all this extra apparatus like the vacuum, the dust shoe, and all that other stuff, I mean, my setup, I pull a magnetic. I pull the fins off, which is, I've got 6 little magnets. Pop it off, and that little thing sticks right out just enough where I put in that hex wrench, quarter turn, swap it back. I mean, it's
yeah,
it is a quick change.
I like mine that's on the one out in the shop. I haven't had a chance to use it. I don't cut much out there anymore. I'm usually stuck out in the garage doing different things out there, and I may try to get one for the DeWalt or something, or maybe just I may just buy another one of those router mounts. You know, I got the aluminum router mount out there on that 4x4 that I had for years. But I may try to buy one of the ones from CNC Router Parts and put on that 36x24 machine and put a quarter cable on that, or maybe get one of those mounts for the DeWalt. I don't know. But anyway, well, guys, I appreciate y'all hanging around here. We still got a pretty good crowd. Had about 80 folks watching at one time, I think. We still got 66.
Yeah. Mind if I throw out a little announcement? Or
you certainly may.
Hey, just wanted to remind everyone that October 26th and 27th here in North Carolina, it's actually up in Hickory, North Carolina, Klingspor's woodworking shops doing their woodworking extravaganza. So if you don't have anything going on, want to come up, I know there's a bunch of people already talking about heading up and spending the weekend up there. I plan on going up Thursday night. The show is Friday and Saturday, so I plan on being up there the whole time.
As we speak.
Are you definitely going to be there, Mike?
Yep.
You know, I've gone the last 2 or 3 years and you haven't made it. So I was thinking about setting it out this year, but now that you're going, I'm going to have to go.
If I got to go AWOL, I'm going this year.
There you go. Okay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Zach is going to have a Southern Woodworkers booth, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. Southern Woodworkers are going to have a booth up there. Tool Masters I'm not sure if they're setting up a booth, but I know the Tool Masters, Izzy Swan's going to be there, and there's going to be, so it's looking like there's going to be a good crowd there. Actually, if you listen to, maybe I've said too much podcast, I believe all 3 of them are going to be there, which could be dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a good show. It's been running years and years and years. I didn't even know about it until I think I've been the last 2 years, maybe 3, 2 for sure. And that is a great show. Of course, I usually come home a lot lighter in the pocket. You know, one year I bought that scroll saw. I can't remember what I bought last year, but I always end up buying something that I don't use.
Well, the Atlanta Woodworking Show, for some reason, they keep planning it on my wife's birthday. So,
well, do you want me to make a few calls and get that changed? Or
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the Atlanta show, I really enjoy that show in Hickory because it's not, you know, like Atlanta the last 2 years, and I think even this next year they're going to do it at the Cobb Gallery again. It's up there right across from the Brave Stadium, all that dang traffic. And I don't like going to Atlanta anyway. So, you know, I hate that. But it's a nice drive up to Hickory. It's, you know, a little small town. It's a very nice convention center. There's 5 or 6 really nice hotels right there within walking distance. You don't even have, you know, if you drive park car to hotel, you can walk to the convention center. Unless you got to haul your whatever you're buying back home. But yeah, that's a great show. I'm glad you mentioned that. I usually try to remember to mention that, and I'd forgot. But yeah, October 26th and 27th, Friday and Saturday. So look forward to seeing you there, Michael, for sure. Dave, didn't you buy your lathe last year? Yeah, I bought my. I didn't buy it at a show though. I bought Amazon Prime. And the UPS. In fact, there was a UPS gal that had to deliver that and get it out of her truck. I had to go up there with my hand truck, meet her at the truck to get it out because it was heavy. But I bought what did I buy? No Comet 2. That's what I bought. Yeah. Bought that last year around right before Thanksgiving, I think it was. Okay. Yeah. Mark says, we would have thought you could do a show hour and 40 minutes about router bits. Yeah. And you know, the super chats keep coming. I may just keep talking.
Yeah. and we haven't done anything on the
super chat till I said we're about ready to go here.
I will say this. What people say, why would you put a bearing bit on the CNC, and I actually have used them. There are times where I want to get a nice little round over, and as precise as your machine is, it still leaves that little tiny edge. And I've had occasion where I come in from the side and use a round over bit on my with a bearing on it, and just give it like 0.01 where there's a little bit of pressure on the thing, and it's worked out fine for me.
Technically the rule of thumb is don't use a bit with a bearing on it on a CNC. But since you mentioned that, I've been showing this bowl or tray bit, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, before I bought this one, I had this one.
Yep.
And this is a 1/4 inch shank, and you see it's got the bearing on it. But as long as you're not cutting too deep, that bearing never touches anything. So I just left it on there. But then you can see this one's a lot more well used than this one. So then when I had to replace it, I thought, well, I'll get 1/2 inch shank and get one without the bearing. But all right. Thank you all so much for hanging around. Thank you guys for the super chat. I appreciate it very much. Check out the links down in the description. There's a link for some swag. If you like how handsome me and Mr. Mursky look in our Garage Works shirts, you can go over and get a shirt or a hat, or Gatton CNC, same thing. In fact, I'm not even sure which link that is. It may be the Gatton CNC. But all kinds of swag there. But anyhow, appreciate you guys watching. Next week, here's what I want y'all to do for me, though. You guys that are still watching, we got 68 people still watching. Next week, we'll talk about let's see, I had 2 things. I can't remember one of them.
Well, let's not talk about hold downs because I won't be here next week. Let's do that the week after.
Well, I was going to say we'll either talk about hold down techniques or something else, and now I don't remember what the other thing was. And I was going to tell them to put a comment, and whichever one got the most comments. Well, what else was it, Hobby? We've talked about it before.
I'm trying to remember. Vacuum.
Let me look at my list.
Was it vacuum dust shoes? No.
Yeah.
Was it?
Oh, okay. CNC accessories.
CNC accessories. Yeah, that's
CNC accessories. So, yeah, put a comment, and not in the chat thing, but the comment down below. Well, I guess you could put it in the chat because it's too hard to find it.
It's about to go away. Might as well put it on your channel.
Yeah, put it on the comment below after this thing goes as a recording, and just say, hey, I'd like next week's show to be CNC accessories or hold down techniques or systems or whatever you want to call it. And we'll have to have Mike back next week because he's got this awesome pocket things. Those are cool. I have a few, but mine I use once and I may not use them again. Well, the one I do for I use a lot. I use it all the time, but some other ones I've made, and it was just to get that precision for that one time, and then I never use it again. So, yeah, Mark Lindsay.
Talking about the
CA glue. I was wondering how we could have took bets on how long it would take for him to say that.
No.
Yeah, we'll get into that in the next week or two. Leave me a comment down below what you want us to talk about, or if you got something totally different besides those two. I never thought we'd make a whole thing out of router bits, really, but there are a lot of them when you think about it, I guess. So, anyway, thank you all so much for watching, Michael. Thank you for coming on tonight. Always good to see you. And I look forward to seeing you at Hickory. Hobby, thanks again. Always helping me watch the chat and looking awesome in your Indiana Hobby hat. So we're going to wrap this up. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see y'all next week. Good night, everybody.
Night all.